There is a man who is told, directly to his face, by people who are supposed to be professionals, that he would never work in Hollywood. Not because he lacked talent, not because he could not act, but because he was 5'0" in an industry that had decided, without any real discussion, what a leading man was supposed to look like. And instead of adjusting himself to fit that world, he did something that very few people in the history of that business have ever managed to pull off. He made the world adjust to him. Danny DeVito was born in Neptune Township, New Jersey in 1944, the only son in a family of 3 kids. His father ran a pool hall. His mother was sharp, funny, and did not take nonsense from anyone, a quality her son inherited so completely that it became the foundation of an entire career. Growing up, Danny was not the kid teachers pointed to as the future star. He was small, loud, and funny in a way that made adults slightly uncomfortable because the jokes were a little too smart for someone his age. He attended oratory preparatory school in New Jersey, and by the time he graduated, he had one goal.
He wanted to act.
He enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. And here's where the story gets interesting because Danny DeVito did not go there to become an actor in the traditional sense. He originally enrolled in a cosmetology program. His sister was a beautician and he wanted to help her with her business. But while he was there, someone pointed him toward the acting program and something clicked. He switched, threw himself into it completely, and graduated with a genuine craft that most people who later dismissed him based on his height never bothered to look for. The years that followed graduation were not glamorous. He was doing off-Broadway work, small parts, anything he could get. He was sleeping on floors, living out of near nothing, doing what every serious actor does in their 20s when they believe in something the industry has not yet decided to believe in with them. And during this period, he met 2 people who would change everything. The first was a young actor named Michael Douglas. The second was a young actress named Rhea Perlman, who he met in 1971 and who he would go on to marry in 1982 after more than a decade together. Michael Douglas, whose father Kirk Douglas was already one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, became one of DeVito's closest friends. They were roommates. They were broke together. And when Michael Douglas later became a producer, he would not forget the small, relentless, brilliant man he had shared a tiny apartment with in New York. That friendship would eventually produce one of the most profitable creative partnerships in Hollywood history, but that comes later. The breakthrough that first put Danny DeVito in front of a national audience was not a movie. It was a television show. In 1975, he was cast as Louis De Palma, the dispatcher on a sitcom called Taxi. And what happened next is one of those moments in television history that people in the industry still talk about. The character of Louis De Palma was written as a supporting role, a background presence, the abrasive, power-hungry little man behind the cage who is supposed to be comic relief for the main cast. Within one season, Danny DeVito had made Louis De Palma the most compelling character on the show. Not the most likable, not the hero, the most compelling. There is a specific kind of acting genius that makes a villain or an anti-hero so completely realized that audiences cannot look away even when they should be rooting against them. DeVito had it in a way that was almost unnerving. Louis De Palma was petty, manipulative, self-serving, and yet somehow, underneath all of it, there was a loneliness that DeVito played with such precision that you felt it even when the character was at his worst. He won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series in 1981 for that role. He was nominated 4 other times. The show ran until 1983, and by the time it ended, Danny DeVito was not a supporting actor anymore.
He was a name.
Hollywood came calling, but it came calling on its own terms at first. The early film roles were small, character parts. The industry was still not sure what to do with him in a leading capacity. But DeVito had something that most people who face institutional resistance do not have. He had patience paired with relentless output. He kept working. He kept saying yes to interesting projects even when the money was not significant because he understood that the body of work was the argument. You could not look at the totality of what he was producing and make the case that he did not belong. Then came 1984 and a film called Romancing the Stone, produced by Michael Douglas, the old roommate who had never forgotten. DeVito played Ralph, a scheming opportunist, and the film was a massive hit. Suddenly Hollywood was paying attention in a different way. The following year, Jewel of the Nile brought the same team back together. And then in 1987, Tin Men paired DeVito with Richard Dreyfuss in a drama that showed he could carry serious material without the comedy acting as a safety net. But the moment that permanently changed the conversation was 1987's Throw Mama from the Train, which DeVito also directed. It was the first major signal that his ambitions were not just in front of the camera. He could construct a film. He understood pacing, tone, performance, and the specific dark comedy that would become his signature as a filmmaker. Critics took notice. The industry took notice. And DeVito began to occupy a space that very few performers ever reach, the space where being in a project automatically elevates it, regardless of the size of the role. 1989 brought The War of the Roses, which DeVito directed and starred in alongside Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. It was a savage, pitch-black comedy about the destruction of a marriage that refused to give audiences the comfortable ending they expected. It made over $160 million worldwide on a budget of $26 million. It remains one of the most uncompromising studio films of its era, and DeVito made it happen. Then 1992, Batman Returns. Tim Burton's gloriously strange sequel cast DeVito as the Penguin, and what he did with that role belongs in any serious conversation about physical acting in cinema. He was unrecognizable.
He was grotesque.
He was genuinely unsettling. And underneath the prosthetics and the raw fish and the black bile, he delivered a performance about rejection and abandonment that hit harder than most straight dramatic films manage to. Children who saw that movie were terrified. Adults who saw it were unexpectedly moved. That is a very difficult combination to achieve, and DeVito nailed it completely. The same year, he starred in Batman Returns. He also appeared in Hoffa alongside Jack Nicholson, a film he also directed. The range on display in a single calendar year, the grotesque physical comedy of the Penguin, and the grounded dramatic weight of his portrayal of Robert Chowero in Hoffa was the kind of thing that should have generated significantly more awards conversation than it did. But DeVito had long since stopped needing the validation of award bodies to know what he was. In 1996, he produced Pulp Fiction director's follow-up? No. He produced Matilda, which he also directed and appeared in, and which has become one of those films that entire generations hold with a specific warmth that does not diminish with time. Ask anyone who grew up in the 90s about Matilda and watch their face change. DeVito produced it, directed it, and played the wonderfully awful Mr. Wormwood with a commitment to comic villainy that somehow never frightened the children in the audience the way the Penguin had. Then, in 2005, a television show began that would introduce Danny DeVito to an entirely new generation. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was already running when DeVito joined the cast in Season 2 as Frank Reynolds, the morally unhinged, swamp-dwelling, chaos-generating father figure of the group. He was 60 years old when he joined that show. And what followed over the next 2 decades, the show is still running, making it the longest-running live-action comedy series in American television history, was a performance so committed, so fearless, so completely without vanity that younger audiences who had no reference point for Taxi or Batman Returns or The War of the Roses fell completely in love with him on his own terms all over again. Frank Reynolds became a cultural institution. The man who ate a sandwich out of a couch cushion. The man who got stuffed into a couch. The man who arrived at a party inside a giant green bodysuit that has now achieved genuine iconic status in internet culture. DeVito did all of it with the seriousness of someone playing Hamlet, which is exactly why it works. What the full arc of Danny DeVito's career demonstrates is something that is genuinely rare in any field, not just entertainment. It demonstrates what happens when someone refuses to accept the definition of their limitations as written by people who have not actually tested those limits. Every door that was closed to him, he eventually walked through, not by forcing it, not by compromising what he was, but by building something so undeniable on the other side of it that the door became irrelevant. He is in his 80s now. He is still working. He is still completely himself. And the industry that once told him he did not fit the mold has spent 50 years being quietly grateful that he never listened.